Jackson trying to escape and run for it, and he's got it more. Lamar Jackson down the sideline. Will they give it to him? They will. Touchdown, Baltimore.
And with 1:17 left to play on Wild Card Weekend, the Hayes in the barn.
Oh my God! I wish we had a camera in here so you could see what we're doing. We're just a bunch of clowns in here.
How much fun is that?
All right, welcome on back to another edition of the Baltimore Beatdown podcast. It is Wednesday, May 5th, Cinco de Mayo. Yee-hoo! By bio. My name is Jake Luke, and I am joined by Spencer Nathaniel Schultz. What's going on, bud?
Not a whole lot. Hope our ladies and germs are getting themselves into some margaritas a little bit later and hitting that up. You know I will be. So go get that frosty beverage and go mull over some Ravens draft picks. Go mull over some Alejandro Villanueva, who has a little bit of that Spanish descent, and I believe spent quite a bit of time in Spain, if I'm not mistaken. Well, that is not the liberation of Mexico, but got that little Spanish flavor as well. So Ravens welcome aboard Alejandro Villanueva on a 2-year deal worth $14 million up to, with $8 million guaranteed. Sounds like they basically have a 1-year deal with an option for a second year at about $6 million, something of the sort. So that puts a lot of context to this draft class, where the Ravens ultimately did have Villanueva under wraps, it appeared. So how do we feel about it, Jake?
I like it. I like it a lot. I mean, we've been talking about this being the move going back even before the draft, and the fact that they sat there throughout the draft, they didn't take a tackle. There was a lot of annoyance, I think, from fans. But I don't know, at a certain point, at what point are you going to be able to grab a starting right tackle in the draft? You can't really count on anything pretty much past the second round at best. So the fact that they passed on developmental guys, I'm kind of fine with it, because you've got a couple developmental guys on your roster right now. Tyree Phillips, obviously Bredesen, more of a guard, Powers, more of a guard. But I don't know. It kind of just feels like you've got a couple of those guys in-house. Sign Villanueva, Dennis Kelly's still out there. I doubt they'd make a double dip signing there, but if they chose to do that, it might not be the dumbest thing for depth's sake, I guess. But yeah, maybe a little bit of consternation about price too, that $8 million tag. I think some people were it was a little too rich for their blood, but where else are you going to get a starting right tackle right now for anything less than maybe $7 million optimistically? So it kind of is what
maybe you save $2 million at the absolute most for someone who started, I believe, 5 consecutive seasons for the most part. And it's just kind of funny. Him and Zeitler, both tons of AFC North experience, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, big fellas, athletic guys that are, we have an interview with Emory Hunt attached to this, and he starts talking about Ben Cleveland and Kevin Zeitler, and you can throw Mr. Villanueva in there as well. Guys that don't have a lot of fat on their body. They're not those, big, fluffy, overwhelmingly gigantic kind of DJ Fluker types. And they're going to be able to move. They're going to be able to work some zone concepts, some things like that the Ravens haven't been able to utilize quite as much. And they do have a prolific man gap scheme that they do love so much, but those guys can punch that out well, especially Zeitler is pretty versatile there. So definitely, like you said, where else are you going to find it? And if you go bring in a rookie, there's going to be a learning curve. Jedrick Wills wasn't super sharp last year to start. He ended up having a great season on a great offensive line, but that turned out really well. It could have gone a lot more sour. Andrew Thomas, the first tackle off the board last year, my offensive tackle one, he really struggled early in the year. So like you hit on perfectly, you're not going to be able to maybe draft a Tevin Jenkins, and the likelihood of him immediately coming in and playing at a high level as a rookie is just not super high. Orlando Brown didn't find his way into the starting lineup until halfway through the year, and definitely had some struggles. So tackle's a tough position, and luckily at the same time, you got Lamar Jackson back there. You've got a run-heavy offense, and I think that's going to help Villanueva a lot. You can find some content on Baltimore Beatdown, some analytics and statistics coming in terms of bounce rate and some stuff like that. But Villanueva basically is just the cherry on top of this draft class to me, and feels like they're going to have a pretty complete roster for the most part. Of course, maybe an outside linebacker type, and Melvin Ingram, Justin Houston, Ryan Kerrigan probably might be on the way. But if not, Ravens have, 10, 11 picks next year in their back pocket, and we've known Eric DeCosta to be a real thief, shyster at the trade deadline, waiting it out, going and finding an impact player. So if the pass rush isn't good enough, I don't think this Ravens team's going to stink on ice by any means. They'll probably be in contention around the trade deadline and able to go get someone.
Yeah, and I mean, breaking it down left or right, you got Ronnie Stanley, great. You got Cleveland at left guard. A lot of people are thinking, which we'll see what happens. Obviously, third-round rookie, that might be a little bit tough, but I feel like interior line is going to be an easier transition for a guy like that who does appear pro-ready. You got Bradley Boseman moving to center. It feels like a nice little move. I mean, obviously, we're going to get into it with one of the listener questions who thinks he's maybe league average. That might be the case, but that's better than what they've had at center the last couple of years. Right guard, Kevin Zeitler, great. Villanueva, solid if nothing else. So you got a lot of Steelers fans crapping on the guy and like his play the last couple of seasons. Well, he was at left tackle, on a team that could not run the ball with Ben Roethlisberger back there, just kind of hanging on to it and doing whatever he was doing. And he was fine, and their offense was good at times, but it just feels like he's set up to succeed a little bit more here in a lower pressure position with a good coaching staff around him and a good offense.
Absolutely. One of the most tackle-friendly offenses you can play in. Ravens have a 36% play action rate. The Steelers have like a 9.6, if I'm not mistaken. So almost 4 times the frequency. The amount of dropbacks is not going to be the same. There's not going to be as many true pass sets. And you have to think, the Steelers were getting the ball out quickly, and it felt like teams started to really creep up late in the season and try and play some 5-under type zone concepts and match concepts that forced Ben to hold the ball. And things did not go well when Ben held the ball. He wasn't able to push the ball deep. So when you're a tackle that's trying to quick set or jump set and really get just in the way as quickly as possible and not worry about sustaining blocks, you might have a little bit of struggles. And is Villanueva a great run blocker? No, but the Ravens run scheme is going to elevate those guys. You can go, the Ravens this is what Steelers fans don't understand, and people that don't pay a ton of attention to the Ravens don't understand. They were platooning in game over the course of about 2 months, even in the playoffs, Tyree Phillips and DJ Fluker. That is not normal. That doesn't happen. The reason you might be doing that is, as a coaching staff, you're doing your very best to basically go fastball, change up, not letting edge rushers get a beat on a guy and how to continuously beat them with one move. I mean, DJ Fluker doesn't have very quick feet. Tyree Phillips doesn't have very quick feet. So you're hoping that they can give a little bit of a different look. And then you go get a guy that has tons of experience. He's going to be playing the sight side, I guess, as opposed to the blind side, where you've got Lamar Jackson able to see that way and read and react. And you got to think, if with Villanueva having like 36-inch arms, even longer than Orlando Brown, he's going to be able to use that length and get guys to run the arc. And then that gives Lamar a little step up lane where you've got Kevin Zeitler inside there, 2 experienced players next to each other. Bradley Boseman has now spent the 3 years in the Ravens offense, 2 years in, somewhat of a starting capacity. Last year, definitely a full-time starter. So he's going to know the calls. He's going to know the offense. He's going to know, the verbiage and the calls of the line, all that good stuff. And then, of course, Ronnie Stanley, who we're expecting to return to a high level. Maybe there's a little bit of rust there, but it feels like a much more solid 5-man unit than the Ravens had last year. And then you talk about some rookies coming in, some playmakers on the outside, Sammy Watkins, Tylan Wallace, Rashad Bateman, all those guys. This offense should be deep. It should be pretty balanced overall. I think we've heard Greg Roman start to really make some comments that they're going to seek a little bit more balance and get those dropbacks up just a little bit. And, the Ravens offense, despite what people think, runs the ball more than Roman did in Buffalo or in San Francisco. So I think he does truly seek a little bit more balance in that regard. But another veteran, I talked so much about that last year. Villanueva's got experience. Zeitler's got experience. A little bit older of an offense. Sammy Watkins coming in as well. So that makes you a little bit more comfortable. Guys who have played in some big games. Villanueva's won some division titles. Zeitler, don't think has, if I'm not mistaken, but getting some experience there as well. And is Villanueva going to be an improvement? Probably not. No, he's not going to be better than Orlando Brown. That would, be quite shocking. But he knows the division. He knows the Steelers. You know what you're getting. And I think he gives you the ability to run some more zone concepts as well as integrate into that power and make it a little easy on him. So it's a signing that we saw coming for quite some time, it felt like, and the Ravens did the right thing. So finding a long-term answer next year, hopefully, It's not the line that we envisioned when, Orlando Brown and Ronnie Stanley were really kicking ass in 2019, but it is what it is. And I think DaCosta did a great job getting this line up to snuff, making it a little more balanced out and adding some size, some strength, some mobility, all that good stuff.
Yeah, I'm not sure how it shook out, but it kind of feels like they parlayed Orlando Brown, if not into OA, then into Ben Cleveland and Tylan Wallace, which, I might honestly make that trade.
Right. And then you're going to have to find a move down the road, but you knew that was coming anyway because Orlando Brown wasn't going to re-sign at left tackle. And yeah, so this line should be good to go. You've got all kinds of depth. Guys are going to be fighting to stay on the roster inside between McCary and Tristan Colon-Castillo, Ben Bredesen, and Ben Powers as well. So those guys have some action aside from Bredesen, and Colon-Castillo only got, a little bit, but with Powers and with McCary, they have a good bit of game experience now. So you're comfortable if, God forbid you got to put them in the lineup and maybe Ben Powers does win that left guard spot. I don't think Bredesen will. I do think it will be Ben Cleveland ultimately, but there's going to be a lot of experience there. You know what you're getting. You trust Villanueva a lot more than you trust DJ Fluker. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. Maybe you do have one kind of shitty tackle, and it is what it is. But, can't have everything perfect. The Chiefs did everything they could this year, and they're going to have to be paying a pretty penny to Orlando Brown or letting him go after trading a little bit of draft capital away. And, the Ravens are continuing to move forward, and it feels like, Jake, you and I, we said we want Lamar Jackson as close to a vacuum as you can get him with what was available, with what tackles they could afford, and with the way this draft went, it feels like, the receiver room is rounded out, the running back room is rounded out, the offensive line is deep and has veterans on it now. They've got some options at tight end between maybe Oliver, maybe Ben Mason, then Nick Boyle, of course, and Mark Andrews. So overall, this offense just feels more complete than it ever has in this Lamar Jackson era. And that's really exciting. That's awesome. That's what we asked for and we received. So Eric DaCosta, got it together, and I have nothing but praise for him right now. We've questioned some stuff for sure. We were kind of pissed off by his smokescreen of the insulted comments, and he definitely got our freaking necks with those. But I know I'm happy. I know you're happy. And I think all of our listeners should be as well.
Yeah, I give him credit after a very tumultuous offseason, very tumultuous, like the Orlando Brown crap breaks. And it's like, what GM in the league has to deal with that shit? And Orlando can do what he wants and it's fine. I wish him success, whatever. But it's kind of tough for him and his teammates. It seems like Ronnie Stanley might've been pissed off, and I get it. It's a lot of drama just on that front. Then you're striking out on these receivers, which may or may not have even been worth the money that you were offering because you were so desperate to just solve this problem and end the conversation. Kind of feels like if one of Wallace or Bateman hits, and the way that I like them heading into this draft, I expect them both to hit to at least some degree. It seems like you solved that issue, and you did what you could with Orlando Brown. You got some pretty good players out of that. You wind up with Villanueva anyway, so I give them a lot of credit for stabilizing the ship. And I do feel pretty good about where they're at right now, and I give them credit for that.
Absolutely. And you've got two receivers in Wallace and Bateman that can do some stuff downfield, man. And that's what it feels like they've been missing a little bit. Some of that interior presence. You do have that with Mark Andrews already. And, that inside-outside game where Wallace is comfortable taking shots over the middle of the field. Bateman's comfortable. Wallace, a tough guy to bring down after the catch, as well as Bateman, another missing aspect. So all good stuff there. And then, the finishing touch on this entire roster might just be that one veteran edge player to make sure they've got someone competent there. You of course, like what you see from OA in some ways, and I've talked about him and his ability to defend the run that I like, but you do have to be able to rush the passer. We have Emory Hunt on this episode who is talking about, he needs to be a closer, and the Ravens do need a closer. Tyus Bowser never had a ton of sack production. I don't think Pernell McPhee's ever had a ton of sack production. Calais Campbell, has had a good bit over his career, especially for the position that he plays, but they do lack that sort of closer right now. But sometimes those great quarterbacks, when they don't play with the Chiefs Super Bowl offensive line, can kind of negate pressure anyway. So this Ravens defense does build back to front, and you like their secondary. You like the depth that they pick up. I knew Emory was going to be really high on Brandon Stevens. I just knew it. I still have not gotten to really dive into Brandon Stevens' tape ultimately, but Shawn Wade as well, a guy that we didn't really end up mentioning, see what he can do in the nickel. And yeah, this team feels a lot better as of today than it appeared it would be at many times throughout this offseason. and that's on paper. And they've got the new coaching staff. You're curious to see what Mr. T. Martin as well as Mr. Keith Williams can do to ramp up this passing offense. They also had to replace a ton of staff, and it's still COVID. It's still, some COVID protocols. The OTAs, guys are not really wanting to go. I think, if I'm not mistaken, the Ravens did call out that they are not going to be doing OTAs in Baltimore. And you do see Juan James, the offensive tackle for the Broncos, suffers a season-ending injury, and now he's going to have his entire contract probably voided because the injury that he suffered was not at the Broncos facility. And that might be a real eye-opener to guys around the league that maybe you should be doing it in-house, especially veterans who want to keep their finances safe. And that is a different conversation of whether that's fair or not, but that's the case right now. So interesting stuff coming up, and maybe the Ravens aren't done yet.
Yep, definitely. Hopefully not. And I'm not done either on the vaccine front. I got my second one coming in tomorrow. Pfizer number 2 on Cinco de Mayo. And I bring that up because the Ravens announced in a letter to season ticket holders that they are expecting full capacity seating in their games this coming fall.
And you better believe I'll be vaxxed up as well by the time that needs to happen. I like what the Buffalo Bills did, basically saying, hey, nobody out of state unless, and then the people in state, you got to be vaxxed up and able to prove it a little bit. So I like that philosophy a lot, and I would encourage people to as well and get that over with. And maybe we can get this pandemic situation and return to normalcy, get the pandemic a little bit behind us. But things feel calm on the Ravens front for the first time in a while. The draft is over. It's always kind of a relief, and seeing where the cards fall, and the Ravens always get a ton of love that makes everybody feel great when you're reading the draft grades and all the post-draft content. Everybody always wants to give the Ravens credit because it does feel like year in and year out they do kind of sit there and get some quality football players and guys that can make a difference. And it feels like even in that 4th round, in that 3rd round with Cleveland and Wallace, you got guys that can probably come in and play. Cleveland might be, the most important piece of this rookie class. If he ends up winning that starting job, he might be the guy who plays 1,000 snaps, as opposed to Bateman will be probably in a rotation situation. I would think to some extent with Watkins and with Hollywood Brown, and knowing the Ravens do like to run some heavier personnel. So getting some value picks later, and we like it. We like it a lot. And I guess that about does it for us here. Yeah.
Yeah, it certainly does. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Coming on Friday, we are not going to have a traditional show. It's going to be an interview episode with myself and Shawn Hubbard, the Ravens team photographer. I think it's about 45, 50 minutes. Just kind of chatting photography, his job with the Ravens, which I didn't realize this. He's been with them for 14 years at this point. So he's kind of always been there behind the scenes, but I think we've only really come to notice him over like social media and whatnot the last couple of years as his work was being promoted. So
incredible photographer, man. He has some of the coolest shots.
Yeah, he really is. Really, really cool guy. Had a ton of fun, self-deprecating. So it was a really good chat with him. Hope you guys enjoyed that. So that is what is coming on Friday. After that, get into some more post-draft stuff. And then we have some really exciting content coming this summer on the horizon. Not quite ready to announce that yet, but that's probably going to be coming June or so. So we got some really good stuff in the hopper. And I just wanted to say thanks to everyone real quick for tagging along in draft season and looking forward to what's coming next.
Absolutely, especially those who participated in the Beatdown Big Board. We had a ton of fun doing that. That took a lot of time, a lot of effort from Jake and myself, and I think we had a ton of fun at the same time while we did put a lot of pressure on ourselves and did really kind of shoulder the show for a while. I think Emory was our first interview in quite some time, but we had a ton of fun getting into the nitty-gritty. We had a ton of fun on draft night, draft weekend, all that good stuff, so we appreciate you guys as always.
From that, but yeah.
I had to like wean myself off of booze. I had to have like a Sunday night margarita. I had a full bender of a weekend. I went to Jake Funk's draft party. That was a mess. Everybody, all this nervous energy all day. And I think I like was getting a little nervous myself. And I think I crushed a cool like 7 or 8 Coronas at one point. And then it was a mess. Went to a teacher party after that. And then all kinds of stuff. So it was definitely rough, but here we got May, we got some warmth coming. Hopefully no more fake summer. Hopefully it's no more secret winter emergencies. And we hope you guys are staying safe, getting vaxxed, getting out and about, spending some time outdoors, and enjoying the content that is to come. Jake's been working really hard on great evergreen content, so we're excited for that to drop as well. Make sure to go give us 5 stars, get those reviews over in the iTunes chart, share it with a friend if you know somebody who likes the Ravens, especially if it's somebody who's kind of removed from Maryland, even though we do get into some Maryland nitty-gritty on this and some local stuff. But we like to think that we give some easy coverage to people who don't get the radio coverage and all the local stuff quite as easily. So send it to a friend. We appreciate it. We appreciate you guys, and make sure to show us some love after a tough draft season. We will show you guys love all the same as usual.
Absolutely. And you can find us on social media. Twitter is at Podcast Beatdown. You can find me at Jake Luke. That is LOUQUE. Spencer is at Ravens4Dummies. That's the number 4 in the middle. And on Instagram as well at Baltimore_Beatdown, plus YouTube at Baltimore Beatdown for full video episodes of the show, as well as our streams whenever we decide to occasionally pop on there. So appreciate you guys, like he said, and we'll talk to you again next week after our interview show on Friday, which was already taped.
See ya.
Arrivederci. All right, we now welcome on a very special guest. It is Emory Hunt of the Football Game Plan. How's it going, man?
Going fine, man. I appreciate you guys having me on the show.
Yeah, man, we always love having you on here. It's turning into maybe a little bit of a tradition here. I know the first time we had you on was maybe just before the season started, but I know last year we got you on post-draft. You just hopped on with us here talking a little bit about what that post-draft life is like for you. It sounds like you're a little relieved, to be honest.
It's a lot of work, man. And, for me, jumping in the draft in January through the draft is, it's a long process, mostly from January to February when we watch the film and grade and stuff like that. And then afterwards, just kind of like waiting until to see where these guys land. This year covered the draft out there for CBS Sports HQ. And, doing live TV and stuff like that is cool, and it's active, and it keeps you on your toes. There's a lot you deal with while you're out there doing live hits, but it's all fun now that it's done. And I usually wait about a good week and a half, 2 weeks before I put out my draft grades, because I always include the undrafted free agents and, so guys that are at rookie minicamp right now.
It's like 35% of the league was undrafted.
Exactly. So to me, that's part of the draft grade, and it's also part of the draft strategy.
I think what you're trying to do there is I think you're trying to avoid the takes that come out about draft grades right after the draft, where everyone's like, oh, these are so pointless,
Listen, I don't care what people say. I'm going to put my draft grades out. People like draft grades. People like lists. I don't care what people say.
No, those people are stupid. I'm just messing with you.
No. I know people always want to make fun of draft grades, and yet those are the same ones that always read them. Same with mock drafts. People hate mock drafts, but they constantly click on it. So, but it's always you grade these players, you evaluate these players. So we're just not supposed to have a take on these players after you spent all that time.
All right, it's just done. It's just over. We'll talk to you guys next year.
Right. So what you won't see is a 2022 mock draft for me, though.
We need that full year. We need that junior tape, that senior tape, baby. The tape's not done yet. I don't like getting too far ahead of those either. I agree with you there for sure. But Emory, you cover what, FCS for ESPN as well? Do you live in South Jersey? Is that why you do Monmouth so frequently?
No, I'm in North Jersey. I do Monmouth games. You'll see me do a lot of Morgan State games. You'll see me do a lot of games in the PSAC, which is in Pennsylvania. So I'm all over. You'll see me constantly across, the Northeast. So I live in Northern Jersey. So Monmouth is just cool because it's a hop, skip, and a jump.
Right.
And it's super fun. I enjoy doing all these games for all these different schools, which gives you kind of a head start on prospects. And it's just fun doing broadcasts. It's just awesome to do.
You're like Tony Soprano. You run North Jersey, but yeah, man, we wanted to get you on here because we love talking the post draft stuff with you, like we were talking about there. And you had your videos coming out over the course of the last week. You had your one come out on the Ravens picks, and it sounds like you were impressed with what they did.
Yeah, I really was impressed with the Ravens top to bottom and how they attacked the draft. Them and Pittsburgh just kind of like I joked on HQ. It's just like I feel as though those teams just fill out their draft cards before the draft and just hand them in. And, they're going to always end up with those players anyway. So it's like they don't even have to bother with the stress of the draft because they just tend to take good football players while the league is scrambling trying to find this athlete, this pro day guy. So the Ravens and Steelers just seem just to pick guys that were good in football at the collegiate level, and they just let the chips fall where they may.
Absolutely. And Odafe Owe is someone that I think a lot of people got a lot of hype out of that pro day and everything that he did. But at the same time, I think Ravens outside linebacker coach Drew Wilkins talked about it, just the way he hits the pads and the violence that he's capable of with the way he plays the game. A lot of people called him a really, the classic phrase, the boom or bust, or the low ceiling or the low floor, high ceiling kind of guy. But to me, I think that his ability to process against the run is really underrated. How do you feel about Oweh there towards the end of the first round?
That's the one pick, to be honest, when you look at it on its surface, is not a Ravens type pick, because the Ravens look at production, and it's hard to get past someone that has no sacks, and that's tough for me. And I know it's tough for Ozzie Newsome. So this is clearly not an Ozzie Newsome pick. However, if you're going to swing for the fences at positions with, team specific, I would rather the Ravens swing for edge rushers. And that's what they do. That's like, the Steelers at wide receiver. You kind of just take them at their word for it because they've been good at developing wide receivers. The Ravens seem to find and are able to develop and coach up these edge rushers. So, I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt because, again, the testing looks great. The production doesn't, but this is the Ravens. That's an outside edge rusher. That's a guy that has length, that has athleticism. I'm willing to bet that the Ravens will figure it out and have him productive within their scheme.
Yeah, so speaking of not Ozzie Newsome, two high-profile wide receivers, what do you think of those guys?
It was interesting. Both guys are very similar in the sense that they have great hands, and they're really good route runners. They get open. I think both are possession guys. I think Tylan Wallace is more of an upgrade to Willie Snead, and I think Rashad Bateman is more of a it's funny, you want to see taller version of Tylan Wallace, but they are the same size. I was shocked about both their height and weight. I thought Rashad Bateman was 6'2", 205, 210, but he measured at 6 feet, 190. And I thought Tylan Wallace.
Not only did he measure in, but I'm not sure if you saw his press conference. He came out adamantly and said, "I am not 6'2". I don't know where anyone got that from. I'm 6 foot 190." So it's kind of funny to see that.
Minnesota, University of Minnesota had you at 6'2", 205. So you are 6'2", 205 based off University of Minnesota's, depth chart. But it was funny to see, him measure at that height and weight. When Tylan Wallace, every time you watch him, just in passing, you're like, oh man, he's, Mawson dudes. He got to be 6'3", 225. And then you see him, he's like, man, he's 6 feet, 190. Wow, he's playing like a big dude. So I think they got two really good, solid possession guys. And I think that's good. They have guys that have speed. You have Prochet, you have Duvernay, you got Hollywood Brown, but now you got some guys that are solid possession guys with great hands. And that's all you can ask for if you're Lamar Jackson, people that can catch the football. I don't care how fast you are, or how far you can run down the field, just catch first, and we will figure everything else after that. We'll figure that out.
Absolutely. Hitting the mailbag from some of our listeners. We got Flurry Raw Photo. I'm curious about Brandon Stephens. Do the Ravens need a clear free safety, or do you think he's someone who can fill that role over time? Emory, how do you feel about Brandon Stephens? And I'm going to go ahead. He's the guy that I watched zero film on out of this draft class. I was very unsure of, and I know that the Czar will have my back and able to give me some information here.
I love that pick, because dude was an outstanding tailback at UCLA. Transferred to SMU because he wanted to go all in playing cornerback. And so naturally the athleticism to turn and run in transition is there because of him playing running back. And then you factor in the fact that he played offense. Now you already know he has ball skills. So he's not afraid of the ball when it's in the air. So it gives you a guy that, can match up and run with receivers, can transition well and go and play the ball at his highest point. That's a really good pick by Baltimore. And he's going to continue to grow as a defensive back. And I think that's something that, people that are not familiar with his game or his backstory have to understand that that's a really good player. He's also not afraid to tackle. So some of the minute things of playing a position, he's still ironing out, but playing in Conference USA where they throw the football a lot. I want people to go check out his game versus North Texas. Jalen Darden is a guy that got drafted, a really good wide receiver, but North Texas runs up tempo and they work touchdown to check down the passing game. So you're going to get a workout if you're out there on the corners, and Stephens did a good job in that ball game and has upside. So he's an athletic guy, not afraid of the ball once it's in the air. and is still learning the position. And so where they took him, it makes a ton of sense. So I thought that was a really good, underrated pick for Baltimore.
For Lenza from Twitter asks, he's got an undrafted free agent question. So they signed Ardarius Washington out of TCU. That was kind of a high-profile signing relatively for an undrafted guy. I'm sure you like him, but he asks which undrafted free agent that they've signed, not named Washington, is going to make the team.
Well, I haven't been familiar with the undrafted free agent list yet for Baltimore, but Washington, he was like my number one free safety. So I'm a big fan of his. The fact that this dude is explosive in all directions, he plays faster than he tests. And I think he fell victim to what Richard LeCounte did. Richard LeCounte plays faster than he tests, and he ended up going late in the draft. But every time you look up, he got the ball in his hands, and he plays defense. That's the type of guy you want. But Washington is, despite him, being built, 5'8", 175, he's not playing like that. He's a aggressive guy. He's able to run up and lay a pop on ball carriers. He's instinctual. And does a great job in playing in the alley. And, he could be someone that people may view as a Tavon Young type. Young is a corner, and Young is really good, man. I like him coming out Temple, but he hasn't been able to stay healthy. So maybe they view, him in the same light as a guy like Young, maybe not a corner, but someone that you can line up in the slot and trust him in coverage, but also trust him, in versus the run. So I think Washington ending up with Baltimore is typical because, again, that's a good football player. And for whatever reason, good football players seem to find their way to Baltimore. It's uncanny how that happens.
Especially with special teams value he's going to present and the processing he has. He's like a grandmaster chess player there at times for TCU when you're watching the way he processes. Moving on, we got the real Noriega. Bradley Boseman is a fan favorite in my opinion. I think he's just around average. I really hope that Ben Cleveland gets a shot at left guard and they kick Boseman inside. How do you feel about Big Ben Cleveland coming out of Georgia, the mountain of a man, Emory?
Yeah, he fits the part. He looks the part, and the fact that they drafted Bredesen last year, kind of adds to the fact that they are building depth behind their frontline starters. But Cleveland is someone that's just dominant in the run game, so you want to run, you're going to lean on running behind him. Sometimes his hands get a little bit out of place, but for the most part, when he locks on, he's driving you out the way. His power step is where it needs to be. He really, stymies a defensive player at the point of attack and is able to get movement. He doesn't have any fat on his body, which is phenomenal for an offensive lineman because he just looks like he's built like Kevin Zeitler.
Right.
If you see Zeitler up close, Zeitler is built like a pro wrestler. And that's what Ben Cleveland is. They're both built the same way.
Which you see like vascularity on them a little bit. Like there's no soft skin there. They're big boys.
They are both big, muscular, athletic dudes. So Cleveland is someone again, for Baltimore to end up with a guy like Cleveland, how does that happen? And so when we're in week 9 and the Ravens are at like 8-1 or something like that, and they're leading the league in rushing, and Cleveland is having success. And people are like, well, how did they get Cleveland? It's like, well, that's just what the Ravens do, And so I like that pick, and the fact that they didn't have to like reach for anybody. They drafted Bredesen last year. They have some good depth there, and so that's just another good, solid pick for Baltimore. It was just fascinating watching Baltimore and Pittsburgh just run through the draft, just getting good players, while everybody else is scrambling around. It's funny. It's become like my joy of draft weekend.
Yeah, we enjoyed it too, for sure. And we got our buddy John Evans on Twitter. A little more of a general one here. Most interesting draft prospect from this class not drafted in the first round, and why?
Michael Carter from North Carolina. And is he talking about Baltimore?
No, just any general.
Michael Carter. The fact of the matter is that Michael Carter is my number 2 running back. So I think highly of Michael Carter. And even though he didn't go in the first round or second round, he went in the 4th round, he landed in the spot where he's going to be the starter in that offense that's going to be based off what we saw in San Francisco. So let's say outside zone read, all those good things. That's what they ran at, at UNC, and this dude never got tackled. I don't ever recall seeing him getting tackled. Every time I saw him, it was post game, his uniform is clean, so that's because he got great elusiveness. And you're putting him in an offense like that with all that talent, that revamped offensive line. He may have over 1,200 yards as a rookie running the football. Again, a guy that doesn't need volume to get the job done. So I think him going in the 4th round to the New York Jets was just a surprise, considering that I thought for sure the Falcons were gonna take him in the 2nd round, considering how they, was able to manipulate the draft in the 1st round. I thought Miami was in position to take him. Miami still needs a running back, but him going to the Jets was huge.
Very complete player for sure. You always see him dancing around the sideline, like you said, and the big contact never seems to find him. Back to the Ravens, we got John C. Amos. The Ravens drafted some edge guys, but will any of them be able to give Baltimore the pass rush they need to beat Kansas City and teams like that?
It's still wait and see. I think what Baltimore needs to beat Kansas City is just better offensive play, more consistent play. You're not going to stop Kansas City. What we saw in the Super Bowl was an anomaly. They had so many injuries up front. That won't happen often. And Baltimore has been in position to beat Kansas City every time they've played them. And so they're not that far away. And pass rush is not going to, because Pat Mahomes has the arm strength and velocity to supersede pass rush. So, yeah, if you have guys on the outside that can get to the quarterback, it won't matter anyway because the ball coming out and it's going deep. So I think Baltimore beefing up on the coverage side of things kind of helped them out. And again, offensively, if they just play better on offense, much more consistent, I think what happens with Baltimore when they play Kansas City, they want to beat them so bad that they, tend to be a little bit tense and a little bit over aggressive and over eager on offense, and they get out of what they do well. If you notice in that game last year, they were able to have success in that opening series, and then they just kind of like, oh, we got to do this, we got to play their game, and then you just it gets out of hand. So I think if they just play better offense, they'll beat Kansas City.
Yeah, it's definitely like a little brother syndrome. You can kind of tell when they're going up against each other. And
in the driveway, there's some tears running down the younger brother's face a little bit.
Yeah, not speaking from personal experience at all. But,
they're huffing and puffing and chest all poked out and, ready to swing on somebody. You got to be patient. It'll come. They have talent. I just think it is not a defensive thing for Baltimore. It's more offense.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think it kind of, these questions, the next one kind of ties in because it talks about edge a little bit and it talks about Odafe Owe. And he's got an interesting question here. So he prefaces it, I think, by saying that he thinks that Owe has a little bit of a lack of bend when he watches him. He thinks because he's a little more jacked up and a little more muscular, that makes him a little more stiff. I'm not totally sure if you would agree with that, but A, do you? And then he asks, do you think that bend is coachable?
That's a good question. I think he has something to it about being too muscular. That leads to a lot of sprains and pulls, and if you're tightly wound,
those hammies will start going.
Yeah, and Herschel Walker was known for being super muscular. I think he had like 1% body fat. He had to wear special shoulder pads so he wouldn't pull muscles in his shoulder or separate his shoulder because there was no fat. Everything was just tight. So it can be an issue being too tight. You saw this with quarterbacks that are too muscular. You can't be a quarterback when you're too muscular. So there's something to that. As far as the bend is concerned, that's just a natural thing for some people. And some people, because Aldon Smith plays 6'9", right? But he finds a way to the quarterback despite playing tall. So I think it's just a natural feel. That's just how he plays. And it's hard to change that at this juncture of your career. You're in the pros. It's not something like a technique thing. So that's just how he plays. That's just a natural running style for him. You wouldn't tell a tall running back you have to get low. At this point, it's just kind of, you just got to find a way to work around that. And so I think for Owe, the best thing for him is just to learn how to, accelerate and close to the quarterback. You have length, use it. And I think that's going to be the coaching point with Baltimore. They're going to say, hey, you've gotten back there, finish the drill, and they're going to work on him on how to finish and how to be, a guy that can be a closer as opposed to being, one of these pressures, Nah, we need pressure. Sound like you just didn't get there. I need you to get the sack. And I think that's what they're going to work with him on, as far as like using that length to your advantage, how to play with better technique, teach him how to disengage faster. That way he can flatline and accelerate to the quarterback.
Very well said. A disruptor, they like to say, instead of the closer, the finisher, the sack guy. Then we got another one from Hector Drill. Could Boykin and Proche be used as trade chips, or do they see themselves on the way out if those two rookies develop fast enough? Where do you think this Ravens depth chart at wide receiver sits, especially after that Tylan Wallace pick? That really put a wrench into things.
I'm a big fan of depth, so I wouldn't trade those guys. Proche can still be a valuable special teams asset, in my opinion. It can be a valuable slot player too. There's no downside to having as many receivers. You see what's going on out in Arizona. They're getting all the receivers, and I think Baltimore can do the same thing. I wouldn't be so quick to get rid of those two guys. Boykin can still be a player for him. Proche and Duvernay, I like to lump them together because they can be significant players, as well. And now you've added more talent out there on the perimeter with those two guys. So I would keep everyone. You want to keep that rotation going. Just open up the offense more. We saw Lamar Jackson be a point and shoot quarterback at Louisville. But people just focus on his running ability because he's so dynamic in that regard. But they threw the football a lot at Louisville. They could do the same thing, with Baltimore and really go single back, stay in the shotgun or stay in pistol and really just get away from two tight ends, and go more 3 wide receiver sets, and have, success there, or even go quad, if you want to. So they can still get what they want to get accomplished because you have the ultimate X factor at quarterback. So your run game is going to always be there because of him and how people defend him and how people have to, align themselves up within the front seven. So your run game isn't going to be a problem. It's just the fact that you can't be conservative in that approach, because you can have all the talented players out there on the field and still, handcuff yourself with your play calling and your formations. And if you don't allow that to, flourish and put all that pressure on Lamar to throw when you need to throw, no quarterback could thrive in that situation. But if you allow him to get into that groove early, you can always lean on the run game because he is the run game. You know what I'm saying? So I would open up just throwing the ball first and then allowing him to get into that passing rhythm before you go into, buck ball mode, we used to call it, where you just get, 9 tight ends out there in the fullback and try to, run the ball for 5 minutes. So I think it's more of a approach problem as opposed to personnel. So I wouldn't get rid of Boykin because he's talented. Proche's talented. Duvernay's talented. I wouldn't really move any one of those guys until you see how, this offense goes. But I would keep all those guys because you want depth and you want talented depth at that position,
especially if you're the Ravens, who've had some trouble with it the last couple of years. But we got one from Stuart Schock. It's another kind of general league-wide one, going back to the draft. What player did you like going into the draft that you think ended up in the wrong place? Example, not a scheme fit or just a dumpster fire of an organization, he says so kindly.
It's a good question. I like that one.
Yeah, that's a really good question. What fit didn't I like? It's not necessarily a fit. It's just I guess Detroit taking Penei Sewell. I look at Detroit and I see wide receiver questions. And, an opportunity to take a really good wide receiver was there, and you didn't. You took the lineman. And I get it. Penei Sewell is a really good player. And, they were jacked up. It's funny, they showed the front office jacked up, and I was like, oh man, they probably got Devonta Smith. Then they take Penei Sewell. I was like, y'all got jacked up like that for Penei Sewell? Like, he don't score points. And so I just think that right there was just, again, don't get me wrong. I want O-line Twitter, coming after me, but that's a good pick. It's a good pick, but for Detroit, that receiver depth chart was rather paltry, and they had a chance. And to be completely honest, their quarterback depth chart is paltry too. So they could have went in an assortment of ways, but they got Penei Sewell, so he helped strengthen the offensive line. But I just thought that pick right there was one that just, you like the player, but the fit was just kind of like, and that's one that really just stuck out, glaring to me as, all right, maybe that I just don't know. That was, I could even also say Baltimore. When we look at Oweh juxtaposed to Joe Tryon, someone that actually can get to the quarterback and someone that you actually have to like hope that he can do it.
Tryon had the experience in coverage a little bit in those shallow spot drops as well that Oweh is going to have to learn, and you didn't see a ton of that at Penn State. So I thought that was interesting too.
We like the Oweh pick fine, I think, but we were both big Tryon guys. So
yeah, Tryon would have made the most sense to me, for Baltimore. If Ozzie was drafting,
very Judon like type player, to be honest.
Exactly. And so that, that's just one that, Oweh, I get it, upside, toolsy, traitsy, but man, production was right there and they bypassed production. So that was another one that just really stood out. I kind of lumped Oweh, the guy from Texas, aside. All those guys are kind of one and the same, just kind of, bigger names than actually productive players. So I'm interested to see as well how this turns out. Because again, they took Jalen Ferguson a couple years ago, who was a sack master in college, and just hasn't really been that dynamic player on defense. But I'm interested to see how they are able to get this thing right with Oweh, because athletically, when you say 4.3, I expect you to be Freeney. Freeney ran 4.3, and Freeney was disruptive as all you know what. So I would say the Sewell pick, and then Baltimore, just keep it local with Oweh.
And the last thing we wanted to ask you about just before we get you out of here was how you felt about the rest of the AFC North, what they accomplished this past week and their situations. Obviously, the Browns really trying to shore up their ability to cover, which was a glaring weakness. You got the Bengals. A lot of people were I can tell how you feel about taking Chase over Sewell, obviously, where they have a little bit different situation even. And then the Steelers, who you seem to be very high on as well. So what are your thoughts on those guys before we get you out of here?
I listen for the Bengals. I understand both sides. I understand the people that wanted them to take, the offensive lineman. My top tackle is Christian Darrisaw, right? So I would have probably taken Darrisaw. However, if they went that route and took Chase, I love Chase. Chase is a phenomenal player. Underrated Rookie of the Year candidate too. If you're going to take Chase, you in the second round, you take one of the better offensive linemen that's there. But the fact that they traded down a little bit and got Jackson Carman, they blew it. Like I thought last year was how they played it, was how you're supposed to play it. Okay, we took Joe Burrow. Top of the second round, we got T. Higgins. Like we got a 2-for-1, right? Like I told Browns fans back in 2018, I was taking Saquon first and then Lamar at 4. And we would have led the league in rushing for the next decade. So if you have a chance to get the 2-for-1, you got to do it right. But I thought they mishandled the 2-for-1. But everywhere else, I thought they got some solid players. So I just thought they mishandled that opportunity. There was some really good offensive linemen at the top of the second round where they were picking, and they traded down and got themselves Jackson Carman, who's okay, right? Pittsburgh, you let Pittsburgh get Najee Harris and Pat Freiermuth. So you essentially let Pittsburgh get Le'Veon Bell and Heath Miller all over again. And then you get Quincy Roche. Like
Roche was one of the steals of the draft, in my opinion. That fit in Pittsburgh. He has a little experience in coverage. He's got that same kind of savvy that I thought Alex Highsmith had last year, and it was kind of that same thing again.
Grew up 5 minutes away from the Ravens facility too, so felt like they could have maybe taken a flyer there in the 6th round or whatever it was. But who am I to say?
It just was amazing to watch that happen. Baltimore, I really did like their draft. I gave Baltimore, I believe, a B+ on CBS. As I get acclimated with who they sign as undrafted free agents, we'll see if that stands or if it goes a little higher. And Cleveland going into the draft, they didn't have many holes or spots on the roster. So I was like, this probably is a team that's going to be primed to, if they have a target in the top 10, package some picks and move up. But the fact that they were able to sit pat and get a lot of good players, I thought they did well too. So the AFC North is going to be excellent. I thought Cleveland did a good job addressing the secondary. And for me, it's the fact that they got Anthony Schwartz, speedster, probably going to be their fastest receiver, and also is a day one core special teamer. So all the teams in the division I thought did really well, and I would say they all got better. The only thing I didn't like was how Cincinnati mishandled the 2-for-1. Like, you had a great opportunity to do right by Joe Burrow. We took your best receiver, and then we doubled down and got, someone like Liam Eichenberg or someone like Brady Christensen or something like that. Look at how the Panthers did the draft, and they were just knocking out picks. The Jets were able to move up and get Vera Tucker. But I just thought that even like the Colts, how you bypass any offensive tackle, at that junction in the first round to take someone that looks like he gets a lot of sacks but doesn't. I just thought certain teams just blew it with a particular pick, and Cincinnati just didn't, I thought, handle the 2-for-1 properly.
They had so much potential with, and even interior guys you're not that mad at if they would have went that route a little more so, but they do need that depth, and it's just too fresh for some people coming off that Joe Burrow knee injury. It was too obvious. And sometimes in football, whether it's in personnel or on the field, the low-hanging fruit, that's just what you want to grab. You just want to take that easy route.
Now, I did see one of the undrafted free agents I did see them pick up was Puka Williams, who I'm a big fan of, which is a great plug-and-play replacement for Gio Bernard. So Shout out to the Bengals for doing that, because Puka is phenomenal. But, yeah, they really blew the 2-for-1. They killed it last year doing it. But this past year, they just kind of like dropped the ball.
Well, we like to hear about Cincinnati blowing it, just like we like to hear your voice hopping on here with us every now and then, buddy. We really appreciate you and your time, all the great info. Before we get you out of here, how about you plug yourself and your stuff for the audience?
Yeah, they could follow me on Twitter at FBallGamePlan. They can also pick up the draft guide, man, because, again, the NFL rosters are transient all throughout training camp and in the preseason and during the regular season. So when your team signs someone and you're like, well, who the hell is that? Best believe we got a scouting report on them. And that's at footballgameplan.com/2021 draft guide. And subscribe on YouTube at youtube.com/footballgameplan. Our draft guide, our draft grades, will be out within a couple of weeks. And, that way you can see our complete thoughts on what we think about the Ravens draft class as we finally close the book. Because, again, the draft is not over. The undrafted free agents are still signing on rosters and still trying to, figure out how they're going to, find the best spot for them. And we always include them in the draft class.
Well, awesome, we appreciate it so much, Emory. Thank you for coming on, and we'll be hearing from you again soon. Make sure to follow the man. You will learn more from his pinky finger than you will from either of us talking about this sport. Thanks again, Emory, and it was a pleasure.
Thanks, buddy.
Appreciate you guys.
Bye.
Gorlami. Gorlami.
Arrivederci.
Arrivederci. Arrivederci.
Arrivederci.